Just how nervous should Dallas Cowboy fans be about their Week 11 matchup against the Carolina Panthers? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys Podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to preview the Cowboys' Week 11 matchup against the Carolina Panthers, a game that the Cowboys are favored in by 10.5 points. But Landon, how nervous are you about this game?
I'm nervous enough that I've been talking about it since last week that I feel like this is a trap game, right? And I do think we should quantify it a little bit. I mean, nervous in the sense that I don't want to see this team come out slow and keep a lesser opponent in this game for 3.5 quarters. And when there's plenty of opportunity to grab a hold of it early and then just, put this thing to bed early. There are some things that concern me. I think we've covered them throughout the week, right? It's an early game. It's an East Coast game. It's an inferior opponent. There have been lots of incidents in the past where Cowboys teams have played down to these opponents and had slow starts and had teams that had no business being around in the third and fourth quarter hang around because of penalties or whatever it is, right? So I think my nerves is more in the sense that this game could turn into that and that the Cowboys will win a tight game, as opposed to like, I'm nervous that the Cowboys are going to lose this game.
So this has always been like a really weird game in Cowboys history. Like they've kind of struggled in this game before the Thanksgiving game, right? Because you're looking forward to this wild week coming up, and then the NFL, for whatever reason, loves to put the Cowboys on back-to-back Thursday games. It's really strange, by the way. I will say, Mike McCarthy does have a pretty good history of performing well in these games leading up to Thanksgiving. If you remember last year, they played Minnesota in Minnesota, the game before Thanksgiving, and that game was over 15 minutes into it. I mean, it was over
one of the better games the Cowboys have played in a long time. I mean, to be honest,
and that was on the road. My general philosophy about this game for the Cowboys is style points don't matter to me at all. Just get the win however you have to get it this week. Try to stay relatively healthy. Give yourself a chance on Thursday. So I'll be honest. One of the reasons why I'm not quite as nervous as I was earlier in the week is the Panthers cornerback situation, which we should probably talk about right off the top.
Sure.
Jase Horn was returned to practice this week. He is not going to play. Frank Reich actually ruled him out just before we came on the podcast. Their other starting cornerback, CJ Henderson, was ruled out with a concussion. So that means their top two corners won't be available on Sunday. You and I
Give me the names. Give me the names, yes. Marcus. Come on, I got to hear it.
So Dante Jackson, good outside corner.
Yes,
he's their best corner by far. The other ones are Troy Hill, who is only a slot corner, who is 175 pounds soaking wet, 32
and
years old.
175 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he's very, very old. Their outside corners are going to be either Deshaun Jameson, who's played 86 snaps this year, or DiCaprio Boodle, which I promise is not a fake name. Like, this is an actual player that we talked about on the crossover show. One of those two players is going to be covering CeeDee Lamb on Sunday.
I'm concerned about the amount of pink that my face just turned when you said that name, DiCaprio Boodle, which is, I mean, next to what was the other one? Flott, Deshaun Flott
from the Giants.
Cordell Flott, who played last week, is just going to be up there in the pantheon of ridiculously named cornerbacks that the Cowboys face in the year 2023. So, yeah, I mean, I think those elements really kind of I mean, look, we should point out several other elements too. It's not like this week was a great week for the Carolina Panthers,
No.
to be clear. On top of that, they've also decided that Frank Reich has decided to take back play calling duties after giving them to Thomas Brown earlier in the season.
Who the Cowboys interviewed, by the way.
What'd you say?
The Cowboys interviewed Thomas.
Yeah, the
Brown
Cowboys
for their
interviewed Thomas
offensive
Brown.
coordinator job.
Yeah, former Rams assistant that Sean McVay thought really highly of. There was lots of thought that he would go out to Carolina and then kind of bring some of those Rams offense elements into Carolina. I have not seen very much of that so far. So I think, there is disarray going all over the place. The ownership is now getting involved in team meetings, which I think it was a kind of thing for Tepper, if I'm not mistaken. But can
I add some more? If you,
yes, please.
You missed the crossover yesterday. Julian Council said that the ownership was on the field. The ownership and like the wives were on the field watching the offensive line drills, trying to figure out what was going on. It's wild. Julian and I were talking about the home crowd. What's it going to be like? What's the atmosphere like? And I kind of joked like, hey, probably 40% are going to be Cowboy fans. And he shook his head like, no, like 60 to 70% are going to be Cowboy fans. And we even heard Frank Wright today in his press conference said they had to spend like an hour of practice working on silent count snaps to get ready for Sunday. So I don't think that's going to, it probably won't be a huge deal, but it's very much going to feel like probably a Cowboy home game in Carolina.
I'll tell you this much. I can't speak for North Carolina necessarily, but I know for a fact there are a ton of Cowboys fans in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't at all be surprised if they traveled to come see the Cowboys on the rare opportunity to see them on the East Coast. So I think that's a legitimate point. Look, there are a lot of things going poorly for the Panthers, and every single new thing that I hear about how poor it is makes me about this percent more nervous because it's like there's so many things going wrong. There's too many things going wrong. The Cowboys can't screw this up. Please don't screw this up.
I will say, so Jerry Jones went on 105.3 The Fan today talking about, hey, remember Arizona. Remember what happened to us in Arizona. We can't let that happen again. One of the reasons why I don't think that's going to happen again is the offensive line. Remember, the Cowboys went into that game without 3 starting offensive linemen. Tyler Smith was making his first appearance of the season. The offensive line was just in complete disarray. Now, again, we haven't heard Friday or Saturday practice, so we're knocking on wood hard again. It sounds like the Cowboys are at least anticipating that their offensive line is going to be available in this game. And I think you're going to see a lot of 6 and 7 man protections because the receiver should absolutely eat in this game against these defensive backs.
Yeah, the Cowboys should be able to. First of all, even without the extra protection, they should be able to protect Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Even though Brian Burns is playing in the game and he is someone to watch out for, definitely on that side. He is fantastic. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league. But I agree. I think you can go out there and if you want, play some 12 personnel, put Schooner out there as an extra like blocking guy to help out whoever on either side. And then just let 3 guys go out and route. And I have a feeling that of the 3 guys that you have going against their cornerback situation, you'll be able to find someone open. And most likely it'll be CD Lamb over and over again. So I do think that there is lots of – look, my nervousness is not about winning the game again. It's about, it's what the Cowboys absolutely need to do in this game is get in there, take care of business early, and then try to find a way to – maybe get some other guys in to sub in some guys, get opportunities for younger guys. Because what you really don't want to do is have to play a
tough fourth quarter
game. Yep, exactly. And then have to go into a Thanksgiving game. This is an opportunity for the Cowboys, right? Yes. To play a lesser team a week, the week before you play in the Thanksgiving game. The Cowboys can take care of business early. We can talk about it a little bit more, but I do think there is an opportunity for the Cowboys to kind of make sure that they go into that Thanksgiving game super healthy, and I think that's going to be super important.
Yeah, let's talk about the risk versus reward of trying to give some of these guys some limited snaps in Week 11. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, all you have to do is pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. I absolutely love PrizePicks for all the different players and stat projections that you can find. It's absolutely incredible. They are also the only DFS platform with an injury insurance policy. Like, take last night, for example. If you had Joe Burrow in your lineup, he left in the first half, did not return in the second half, your lineup would have been rebooted. Again, this is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Like, I don't know, Locked On Dynasty Football. If you happen to like the hosts over there, you can go check out that one. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Landon, let's talk about how do you weigh how much to play everybody in this game? And this isn't to disrespect your opponent this weekend. It's more about trying to make sure that you stay somewhat fresh for an NFC East game against the Commanders on Thursday. How do you do that?
Well, I'd like to first say that I told Marcus that I thought this was a very disrespectful segment to have when we're facing the Carolina Panthers. I cannot believe he brought it up. No, I think it's fair, right? And it's not even about the opponent, right? It's about load management for this segment of the season, which is very difficult. And listen, go back and look. There's been lots of injuries and things that have happened in this segment, in this section of the season that the Cowboys have to face every single year.
Well, look, last night you had Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow and Cam Taylor. I mean, you just had injuries galore on a Thursday game.
Yeah. And not on some artificial turf field or any of that. No. Like just like straight up injuries that are going to happen on a grass field. They're going to happen no matter what. So I think it's important that the Cowboys try to find a way to, and look, not even just like pull guys, but like get heavier rotations in these spots where you have guys that are where their legs are going to be used, right? Like wide receivers, cornerbacks, like these guys. You're already getting rotations in the defensive line, obviously, but just opportunity for some of these guys to kind of keep their legs on a short week.
Like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Jalen Tolbert, he probably plays 10 to 20 snaps a game. Maybe you bump him up to 25 and you just give Brandon Cooks 5 fewer plays, or you give CeeDee Lamb a few fewer plays. Maybe you play more Rico Dowdle. Maybe Rico Dowdle gets 10 carries this week and Tony Pollard gets 14. Like just little things like that.
And maybe even, guys like Lipke get some more carries. Sure. Just like use all the parts of the Buffalo that are available, right? Like I think that's why you saw Jalen Brooks get some targets last week. Shout out to Katie Drummond. He pointed this out on Twitter. I thought it was a very good point. I think this is why you start to get involved some of these younger guys, is so that that if you need to use them for load management reasons, that you can, right? And I think Brooks has shown you, he's been out there. He's shown you that he can block. He's not going to get you beat as a player out there. He can catch the ball if you throw it to him. Tolbert obviously is more than that, right? Like we're already trying to get him into the wide receiver 3 role. So you have bodies there that you feel like you can rotate in. Hendershot is back, which I think is going to give opportunity to kind of give Ferguson and Scooney a little bit of a break. Is he going to be activated
this week?
I that'll be an interesting question. Like it sounded like he went through the whole practice, without any setbacks.
I just wonder. I wonder, like, if they're gonna just keep him one more week and then just bring him up on Thursday, so that way you just have somebody that's a little bit more fresh for that game.
Yeah, that's actually a good thought. You probably don't want to have to call him up and have him do this little gambit, right? Like I think. That after coming off an ankle injury, you give him that extra little bit of time. You don't have to make him play on 4 days rest, 5 days rest, whatever it is after this game. So I think that would make some sense. But the point is that look, you go look at the injury report. The Cowboys basically have everybody that isn't on injured reserve available to them. I think even Turpin is going to be playing this week. Yeah. So there is opportunity to get some of these guys more snaps and kind of take CD Lamb off the field if you don't need him all the time. So you're just not wearing him out.
Like you don't need him on like clear 3rd down and 1 running situations, like where he needs to come in and block a defensive end. Like that's a great time to bring Jalen Brooks in,
I just think in general, like, as opposed to, just wholesale, like, classic hockey line,
don't do that.
Shifting out there. So you don't need to do that. Just, I think throughout the game, sprinkling in Brooks instead of CD Lamb. Let Rico Dowdle take this series. Okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think things like that will just kind of help with load management. And then look, if you get up by, multiple touchdowns, you're in the 3rd quarter, there's no reason not to start really cycling folks in, but let's get to that first. I think that's the key thing is that, you're not making plans to not play in the second half. You're making plans to dominate in the first half, and then we'll see what happens in the second half.
What we're talking about is rotating players in the flow of a game. I mean, not so different than what they do on a regular week, but maybe doing it a little bit more heavily this week.
Yeah.
Wanye Thomas, maybe Wanye gets a little bit more looks in the first half rather than waiting to the second half. That kind of stuff.
More Rashawn Evans as opposed to Damone Clark, or more, just let these some of the guys that are right on the cusp that are rotating in anyways get like 5 to 10 more snaps than they normally would in the flow of the game.
First and foremost, the Cowboys have to win this game. Like if they don't win this game, then I don't want to say it's irrelevant what happens on Thanksgiving, but it greatly diminishes the importance of that game, right? Because all of a sudden now you're falling further behind the Eagles. But if it gets to be a situation where it is a really close game in the 4th quarter, maybe that's when you cut down the rotation, you cut out the subbing, and you go back to your stars. But I think early in this game, it does make a lot of sense to just load manage some of these guys. Now, we were talking pre-show about should Chuma Edoga play, a couple series each half? Maybe, but Brian Burns is also out there. You also don't want your star quarterback taking unnecessary hits if Tyron's healthy.
I think Chuma can come in when Cooper Rush comes in, right?
Yes,
like that's probably the fair assessment there. I just think that, again, this is not a disrespect to the Carolina Panthers thing. Like, you got to go out there and play your best game. Even look, they're still an NFL team, even if they're struggling. Any given Sunday still applies. And if you need motivation, I think Marcus just provided it for you. If you lose this game, that game in 2 weeks against the Eagles or whatever it is, I think it's actually 3 weeks. That's not going to make any difference if you lose to Carolina in this game. You got to win this game. You got to stack these wins to stay close for that late season game to matter. And so that's your motivation, is that, hey, Carolina's in my way and I need that win. Go get it.
The Cowboys have a lot of depth and a lot of talent. Like, this is a perfect opportunity to showcase some of that. And frankly, there's been a couple of guys that we just wanted to see more of anyways. We mentioned Wanye Thomas. I think this is an awesome spot for like Israel Mukamu. Like, if you want to play Mukamu in the slot, especially against Adam Thielen, where he's going to be significantly more athletic, I think that's a fine time to get him on the field. Sam Williams has played really well the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying take Micah Parsons off the field for Sam Williams, but maybe you try to keep DeMarcus Lawrence at 32 snaps and you give Sam Williams more work. But that's just kind of what we're implying that the Cowboys should at least explore here.
Give Nahshon Wright some snaps and let Stephon Gilmore stay on the sideline, or you said it in the slot too. Jordan Lewis came off of an injury situation with his neck. He had a stinger, so not putting him out there when you don't have to, I think will keep him fresher for when he needs to play on Thanksgiving Day.
I would love to see like 19 players on defense play at least double-digit snaps. Like, that's the ideal scenario for me. Is like, just try to use as many different players as you can to get you through this game, and then we'll worry about this ridiculous stretch. Can I tell you how much I hate this 3 games in 12 days? I don't understand why the NFL makes the Cowboys do this, but this is no fun at all. I don't get it.
It really is. I mean, it really is a brutal stretch, and they've tried it a bunch of different ways, like, rearranging the games and who's playing what. The following game will play Sunday. No, we'll play Thursday. It's just a brutal stretch for the Cowboys, no matter how they slice it.
Now, you do have 3 home games. The NFL was very nice to the Cowboys in that sense, where you're not going to be traveling, so it does help out a little bit. But man, it's just so important to get a win this Sunday to give yourself a chance over the next 3 games. Landon, let's make our final predictions for Cowboys Panthers in Week 11 next. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order in with DoorDash. It's at halftime. That is ordering in time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That's your cue to order in. Whenever the game clock stops, that is your time to order in with DoorDash. Order pizza, wings, sodas, burgers, or even just buns on DoorDash. You can get it all delivered without missing the game. If you're staying at home this week to watch the Cowboys, order in from one of your favorite spots out there in Dallas. Go. I always mention 24/7 tacos. Lena mentions a bunch of different places. So
Whataburger, just simply Whataburger. Order from
Perfect.
Whataburger, guys.
Perfect. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Again, that is 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter promo code LOCK23, subject to change, terms apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. Every day, we'll be back on Monday to break down Panthers, Cowboys. We got a busy week of shows, considering it's a condensed week for us as well. But Landon, let's make our predictions. Who do you have winning this game?
Yeah, despite all my hemming and hawing, I'm definitely picking the Cowboys. I mean, I think it's they're 10.5 point favorites. I'm sorry, FanDuel. And I kind of think that they're going to cover that and more. I mean, I just think that, I'm more worried about how the Cowboys, kind of play down to their competition at times and what that says about the team more than I am about the Cowboys losing this game. I think I said that a couple different times at this point. But I imagine that the Cowboys, in my brain, they get a hold of this game early. I hope that they come out aggressive. They get some points on the board. They put the Carolina behind the 8 ball, and then really kind of tighten the grip on them. I think that the score will probably be a little bit wider than it may feel at times. But I'm picking the Cowboys to win 30-14. I think I understand that that's way more than even the line is. But I do think that it's one of those things where it may feel tight for good portions of this game, but the Cowboys' talent is just going to win out at the end and then start to kind of pull away as the game kind of goes on.
I do think we'll see the Panthers come out aggressive. I mean, Frank Reich's taking over the play calling. We've heard from several people that the ownership wants the offense to play better. Carolina is coming off 10 days rest for this game. Like, I think you're going to get the Panthers' best punch in the first quarter of this game. So I won't be surprised if it's 10-3 and the Cowboys are losing after the first quarter or whatever, something like that. But I would expect that Dan Quinn and this defense is going to find a way to kind of figure things out and settle down the ship. You look at the offensive line, like they're really struggling on the offensive line, and the Cowboys have such a big advantage there. I just have a hard time believing that the Panthers are going to score more than 21 points. Like, if they scored more than 21 points, I think I'd be pretty shocked. So even if the Cowboys were to struggle on offense, let's say they just are completely flat in the first half and have 7 points, you're telling me that the Cowboys can't put 2 drives together and win this game late? I think it can be close, but I do think the Cowboys will win.
I think I think you're 100% right on how Carolina is going to face this. I think the ironic thing is that that's exactly the backwards way to try to attack the Cowboys, right?
Yeah.
Like, for them to aggressively try to attack the Cowboys through the air early just to show that this offense is different than, what got the offensive coordinator his play calling duties taken away, is probably not the best way to attack. I mean, they really should probably think more about trying to run the football a little
Establish
bit
the run, grind this game out, and keep it close in the fourth.
That's
quarter.
right. And so they, in an effort to try to showcase for their, their very, very interested owner and his wife that, were watching, line drills in practice the other day. I think that they may be kind of walking into their own trap a little bit by playing into exactly what the Cowboys defense wants to face, which is a rookie quarterback with a bad pass blocking offensive line and wide receivers who can't create separation. No amount of aggressive play calling or incredible X's and O's is going to dig you too far out of that deep hole.
Yeah. I would love to see the Cowboys front four just dominate this game. I don't think you're going to need to blitz. And actually, I think I don't think you want to blitz Bryce Young. I think that's actually where he's pretty good. But if you can get pressure with your front four, drop 7 into coverage, make him throw into tight windows, I think you're going to be just fine. So, I'm going to pick the Cowboys begrudgingly. I know this is that. Yeah,
2 weeks in a row, right?
I know.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah, I know. Things will change by Thursday. Don't worry.
That's right. There we go.
I'm not picking the Cowboys next week. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Again, we will be back on Monday to break down this game. We wanted to let you know that the Locked On Network has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel with all of the national shows, including Locked On NFL, Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Dynasty, all available on the channel. You can go check out our show on Locked On Cowboys on YouTube. We post shows every single day over there. You can go follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy week 11. Enjoy the game. And we'll see you right back here on Monday.